Baylor men's basketball will land the #1 recruit in the class of 2024. I'm calling it. This is Locked On Baylor. Yeah, it is.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Baylor. I am living with the Alaskan bush people, but I found a way to get a haircut within the last week. That's Cameron Stewart, recent donor to Baylor baseball. That was very sweet of you, Cameron.
You're welcome. Look, it's a program in need, and that's when I swoop in.
Yeah. All this NIL talk was going on, and you said, "Look, no sense in arguing anymore."
I'm an old school guy. I don't know how NIL works. I don't know none of that nil crap. But what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna write you a big fat check. All right, Mitch, Mac, gonna write y'all a big old check. That's what I do, man. People forget I'm a baseball guy first.
Do you think they report that? Do they report that stuff before the check bounces? I wonder. Like, dude, we got like $150,000 donation, and then just bam, just immediately bounces. Like,
they rush to the bank, man. I did see it. It was a full on rush.
Thanks for making Locked On Baylor your first listen every single day, especially if your name is Tre Johnson. If your name is Richard Johnson, Dick Johnson, any of the Johnsons, thank you for making it your first listen every single day. I have heard from people named 24/7 Sports Crystal Ball that Tre Johnson, my inside sources have told me that Tre Johnson will soon be un Baylor Bear. And he is maybe the best basketball player to ever exist. He is the Victor Wembanyama of American basketball. He is 5 stars, which is as many of them as you can get. And he is very good at putting the ball through the hoop. Cameron, take it away.
Good player, Drake. Good player. Good player. Good passer, good shooter, good defender. Athletic. He's good at basketball. Tools? I don't know what to tell you, man. The best part about this is when this commitment comes, it's not even like a huge coup for Baylor. He's going to be picking Baylor over Texas, which he was hot on early, but also Kentucky, Kansas. And this isn't even going to be a coup. You know why? Because Baylor gives him just as good a chance to develop into an NBA player and compete for a national championship. Baylor, Baylor Bears have just as good a chance as Kansas, Kentucky, and definitely as much of a chance as the University of Texas does at making him a national champion and a lottery pick, a top 10 pick in the 25 NBA draft. And so this would be, not a coup, but probably the biggest commitment in Baylor history. I know getting some of those guys like Isaiah Austin back when the program wasn't what it is now was definitely a coup. But this is #1, Drake. Like this is a guy you're going to see not only at the prestigious Peach Jam this summer, but a guy who is transferring schools, already signing NIL deals, and will be in that McDonald's All-American game. This is going to be the hoop mixtape you're going to see. High school kids are going to see all over Twitter. Tre Johnson. It's going to be Baylor Bear. Continuing the legacy, by the way. His dad, a Baylor basketball alum as well. Take that for what it's worth.
Yeah. My good buddy Tre Johnson has a rating right now on 24/7 Sports of 999.
Woo!
That's
no. Out of 10, Drake?
5. 9995.
Oh.
The greatest basketball recruit in Baylor history, one named Isaiah Austin, if you remember, the great football player. 9986. This guy, this Tre Johnson guy, is 13 thousandths of a point better than Isaiah Austin. And y'all all know Isaiah Austin. And I got word. Somebody told me in passing, kind of in the, so, who knows? But they said, Drake, did you hear that Tre Johnson's committing this weekend? And I said, well, no, I did not see that. And this fellow was like, yeah, he's committing to Baylor this weekend. I was like,
Whew.
That's interesting news. And he's like, yeah, I got a buddy, he's like, yeah, he's committing to Baylor. So then I go, what do I see? Crystal ball. What does crystal ball have, Matt? 100% pure grinding.
I don't know. Is that good, man? Is that good?
Somebody knows something. 100% is actually more than 9996. It's up there. So I've got word from, inside sources that he's committing as early as this weekend to Baylor. And I've heard, Cam, there's this thing called the Peach Jam that has a pretty big sway in his whole recruiting process. Elaborate.
Yeah. Well, he wants to compete. He wants to commit before then. Now that Peach Jam is coming at the end of July, and so he wants to commit before then. So it could well be.
Can you explain to the people at home what the Peach Jam is?
Barely. It's just a great showcase of some of the best high school players in the country. Okay, I'll give you this.
Does it go great with crunchy peanut butter?
Anyway, Drake, what's great about it too is it also attracts some pretty famous fans. So last year, a Tre Johnson video went semi-viral because there was a guy watching him at Peach Jam who is talking to his friends, and he's like, "This guy's a sophomore? Are you kidding me?" He was a rising junior. He was like, "This dude's serious." You know who that dude was, Drake?
Kobe Bryant.
Close. LeBron James. James. Pretty close with Kobe, but LeBron James is pretty impressed by Tre Johnson. Kevin Durant has also worked out with Tre Johnson. This kid isn't going to be a great college player. He's going to be a very good NBA player. This kid has NBA written all over him. 15 years ago, he wouldn't have even bothered with college. But now he comes to a place like Baylor. This is the next step in terms of that program that we're talking about with Scott Drew. If they lose in the second round again, even after getting him, that's a different story. But you talk about, the rise up on the court, right, to the national championship, to the pinnacle, and then starting to get some blue chip prospects and putting guys in the NBA. Now you have that and the number one prospect in the country potentially coming to you after having that would have been the 2024 would have been the best recruiting class in the country had Yves Missi not reclassified to 2023, which is not a bad thing because now you got 2 5-stars coming in 2023 and possibly the number one guy coming in 2024, coming in over Kentucky and Kansas. This is an absolute program. I know you've had guys on your shows before who like the word program. This is an absolute program if Tre Johnson comes in and they can start making some deeper runs in the tournament again, back-to-back second-round exits. If they start doing that again and pulling in guys like Tre Johnson, the sky's the limit, brother.
Jason Asamoah, 6'8", 190.
Good player too, by the way.
5-star, top 15 player in das Nation.
Woo!
Rob
Nation's
Wright.
pretty big, Drake. Nation's
Rob
pretty big.
Wright, Montverde. So I was looking, I was like, Rob Wright, dude. Like, they're so good. Baylor's like, oh yeah, there's this 4-star guy, the number 8 recruit all time in Baylor in Baylor basketball history, probably Baylor athletics history, honestly. And I was like, Rob Wright. Isn't that one guy? He had that cameo. He was the news anchor in Talladega Nights. I remembered, no, that's Rob Riggle, man. This is Rob Wright. Top 10 player all time. I remember the streets remember Kendall Brown. I was there.
The streets do, man.
I was there. I remember having the same talk about Kendall Brown and being like, he's the greatest player to ever play for Baylor. He's top 5. Since then, Keontae George has overtaken him. Jacoby Walter has overtaken him. And now soon Tre Johnson will overtake him. So what does all this mean, my man? You think about Baylor and you think first round exit every year, except for that one time. Second round exit every year, except for that one time. They won the whole national championship. You think about it. Kind of weird. Here's a weird thought. Last decade, Baylor has had one good tournament year.
Yeah, I mean, they made the Sweet 16 in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good team. 2
good tournament years in the last decade. Is that right?
Yeah, because then the other Elite 8 before that was 2012, right? 2012. Yeah.
What an interesting thought. One of those years in the 10. Real good one.
Pretty good.
Real good.
Better than any University of Texas season. Better than any Oklahoma University season.
one of those 10 in those 10 years also ended in a championship. Baylor has won 2 championships in the last 10 years. Should throw that out as well. You know who else wins championships every day? In my book, it's FanDuel. FanDuel.com is your place to go to bet on sports or just look at things that pertain to sports betting. I have been drinking Hefs a lot recently. This is a Hef. It's brewed in Alaska. It's King Street Brewing Company. It's a local, 5.7%. KingStreetBrewing.com. And I love FanDuel. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. You get that back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. You go to Locked On. You go to FanDuel.com/Locked On. You do it today. I promise. Download the app. I just want you to do it for me, because if you go to FanDuel.com/Locked On, my bosses see that you did that, and I think they're going to like it. You get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Go bet on the Texas Rangers at FanDuel.com/Locked On. And if the Rangers lose, you get $1,000 back in bonus bets. It's FanDuel. They're an official partner of the MLB. Official partner of the MLB at FanDuel.com. Go check it out. Tre Johnson, man.
Yeah.
You said he could pass, he can shoot, he can dribble, he can
do that.
Score. What I mean, look, where Keontae George had the takeover card. Volume shooting guy, could be a really good NBA player. You've had your Jacoby Walter. We're gonna see. Maybe Rod seems like a really good shooter. Eves Missy, big dude, body you in the paint. Who is Tre Johnson? And is that even his real name?
Sources are telling me that it's not his real name, by the way, but that he's the third in line. Let me tell you something, Drake.
You're the third Johnson.
You're a basketball fan. You ever heard of Devin Booker?
He's the guy that plays for the Suns.
You ever heard of Jimmy Butler?
Chicago Bulls, Miami Heat.
Yeah. Tre Johnson is that. Tre Johnson is that. Okay? Pretty good players. Both have made this thing called the All-Star team. All right? Yeah. Both have made the NBA Finals a couple of times.
Not a thing in college for our casual listeners.
Yeah. So Tre Johnson has all of those same, that mature offensive game, okay? Keontae comes in. He's probably the best high school shooter in the country. And Tre Johnson is not that, but he is a good shooter. First off, his shooting splits increased pretty good here from his sophomore year in high school to his junior year in high school, and has another season still to play. And what I saw on tape is that it's kind of a mature game, if you know what I mean, Drake. And that is, he's not just trying to jack up threes every time down and say I'm him because I'm shooting threes and dunking on guys. Gets to his spots. Mid-range game is incredible. Long arms, good vision on the court. Probably better vision than Keontae had. No knock to Keontae. He was a good point guard. But Trey sees the floor, I think, a little bit better. He's very athletic too. And so he's a guy who's going to keep growing, by the way, at 6'5", listed at the beginning of this season. He's going to keep growing with those long arms, especially. So he's going to be very switchable defensively, which is like the best thing you can be in today's NBA, especially, but also in college basketball, and something Scott Drew really, really likes, if you haven't been able to tell over the last couple of years. So if he can bring an intensity on defense, he is going to be just an incredibly well-rounded prospect. He's already a great offensive prospect because of what I said before, gets to his spots, understands his game really well, and is still expanding his repertoire offensively. I see a lot of Jimmy Butler there. Jimmy Butler's a great defender. Okay. So he's not there yet, but offensively, I see a lot of him, and I see a lot of Devin Booker in his future, who's a really great 3-point shooter now, a guy who can score anywhere on the floor. You have to respect him anywhere on the floor, and can really space out a defense to the inside and to the outside with the scoring ability. The kid is good, man. He's got some great touch.
Would you say that he plays the game the right way?
I would say so. Yeah. Now this is again going off of YouTube. I haven't been up to a Lake Highlands game, and I won't be going to any Link Academy games this year. I don't think. I think he plays the game the right way, Drake. Yeah. And his team won the state championship. So the kid's got a pedigree, knows how to win.
And Link is not like a normal team, right? The way I understand it, this is a Montverde. This is a Sunrise Christian, one of those IMG
Finlay
of the
Prep,
world.
yeah.
Right. Am I correct in saying that about Link Academy?
Yeah, they just finished their second season, Drake. And I'm not sure if it's just a program or not. You'll see some of that where it's not actually a school, it's just a basketball program, and these kids go to other schools in the meantime. So I don't know if they're quite that, but they just finished their second season. Were invited to the national tournament both years.
And you said they won a state championship against teams in Missouri?
Tre Johnson won for Lake Highlands.
For Lake Highlands.
Texas. Yeah.
Correct. And
Matt
now
Mosley's Lake Highlands. Yeah.
Link Academy is in Branson, Missouri, right?
It's in Branson, Missouri, man.
What a great place to live and play basketball.
I think that's getting you ready for Waco, if you tell me. If you ask me.
Actually, it is. The top 10 rankings right now. So Scott Drew, if you didn't know, Baylor men's basketball coach.
He can coach.
Hired right around the 03 year. If you didn't know, kind of some background on Scott. I had never been really a head coach at the Power 6 level before. Was at Valparaiso for a year as a head man following his dad. Then a guy got murdered at Baylor. Whole deal. The coach tried to cover up a bunch of stuff. He gets fired, rehired by Oklahoma Christian, and then they fire him. And so wild stuff. If you're up to speed, if you're following me here, Scott Drew's the head coach, been so for the last 20 years. Some are still asking, can he coach? He's had one good tournament run in the last decade. Now, Baylor's in a spot in the top 10 again in recruiting in 2024. Here are some of the teams. This was very interesting to me in the top 10 along with the Bears. Number 1, the North Carolina Tar Heels. 2 5-star guys coming to them in 2024. Number 2, the Rutgers Scarlet Knight. You think it's weird? Number 3, Georgetown.
Woo!
The Hoyas. Baylor's behind Georgetown,
baby.
Number 4,
which,
Iowa
by the way,
State.
I know you're a few years younger than me. Georgetown used to be good at basketball.
Really?
I don't know if you remember that in your lifetime. They used to be good. And
Coach
then if you go back even further, they used to be great.
90s, man.
Long time ago.
Really good in the 90s. Big East. Really good 30 for 30 on that.
84.
Number 4, also ahead of Baylor, Iowa State. Then Texas A&M. Then Arizona. Then your Baylor Bears, number 7 overall in the class of 2024 with 2 commits, including a 5-star. Duke's at 8, NC State at 9, and Syracuse without Jim Boeheim, who killed him.
Without NIL. Yeah, he did.
Without
Jim
NIL.
Boeheim did kill him in. If
Jim
there's anything
Boeheim.
you've learned from our podcasting time together, it's that.
Jim Boeheim, someone has died at the hands of Jim Boeheim, at the wheel of Jim Boeheim. We didn't really talk about it a lot. We just kind of let it go by.
He also peed his pants during a game.
Tony Stewart did the same thing, didn't he? Not the pee in the pants
Tony,
thing.
yeah.
He ran over a guy. We were like,
yeah.
That
was a wild. That was on camera basically too, wasn't it?
And didn't he?
It was like some small time race or something.
And they also thought like, this kind of feels a little reckless. Like he didn't have to hit the guy.
Road rage for NASCAR drivers is not a great combination. Like you have to have some competitive edge. You got to have some dog in you, right? But you can't really kill people. Although, I mean, he's doing Burger King sponsorships after that, so maybe you can.
Object's not
you drive fast
as
enough.
We know, Burger King marketing is the best marketing that there is.
It's pretty good.
So this Baylor team at 7 overall out of the top 10. Scott Drew can recruit, but I want to give some credit here to Alvin Brooks III. How does it go?
Alvin Brooks III.
That's the one. That's the one. John, he beat out Kansas. Alvin beat out Kentucky. He beat out Texas and Alabama. Shout out Alvin Brooks III for all that he's done for Baylor men's basketball. And this would be the number 1 recruit of all time in Baylor athletics history. And I think he's going to go to BU. He's 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. And again, as early as this week, I think he'll commit. Is this – so here's the deal. 10 years ago, this happens. What do you think? Wow. Our little Baylor.
Everything, yeah.
Our little Baylor. But now it feels like this is so normal, especially with the transfer portal. Getting the number 1 guy in a class doesn't mean near as much as it used to, honestly. This means a lot less than it used to. And I kind of hate a little bit how normalized this has become.
Yeah, well, it's double normal for good and bad reason, because when he announced the top 6 a couple weeks ago, I quote tweeted it and said, like, what's crazy is that Baylor's next to all these more traditional blue bloods, and I still like our chances because they've been on his case for over a year now. But also, and we kind of joked about it before going on the air, is I hope no one from Kentucky and Kansas gets in his ear about the money he can make about going there. It's good that he's starting to make his money from that Panini deal now, because I don't know what that looks like at Baylor. But then again, NIL was very much in play last year, and you still kept Keontae George. You still got Eve Misi away. You still got Jacoby Walter coming in. You're doing something right. I mean, other than the obvious, right? So yeah, it is different in that it's not a total coup like we talked about earlier in the show to get the number one guy. It's still the biggest recruit of all time, but also by that same token, the deck is stacked against Baylor still in other ways, like the NIL direction. And he's still got a whole year.
I've started to think this has been an oddly positive podcast. We haven't really brought anything dour or
I can't believe you're able to do that, Trey.
Sarcastic to the table, meaning this will not be
in there for.
This will not be played in the Baylor locker room. This is the one the media, the big time, the big media. They don't want you to see this. They don't want you to see this podcast or being nice about Baylor. They won't play this for the team. But I'm genuinely, I am excited about the number one player in the country. I think it makes Baylor
I can hear
good.
it. I can feel it.
But also, it's a long time away. It's a long time away. There's a good little bit there before a guy inks the paper. Remember, I kind of thought the same thing with Keontae George, like, long time away. We just got to we got to hold it together. And remember a guy named Michael Porter Jr.?
Yeah.
Remember
Still no.
Remember Ben Simmons?
Do I? He used to play basketball.
Remember how those guys were the greatest basketball recruits out of high school ever, and they picked kind of random basketball schools?
Yeah.
And then what happened?
Look no further than the Rutgers, by the way. I think they have like the
Right.
number 2 or number 3 guy, and that's why they're ahead of Baylor in the rankings. But yeah.
Right. So as good as all this is,
Amani Bates.
You can have all this great talent. You got to win with it. You can't do the whole like, oh, we got the best player in the country of like 10 of the best recruits. And I think what's going to be what Baylor will struggle with this next year is who goes where to put what, because there are so many guys who can vie for playing time. And it seems like that issue, air quotes issue, is going to continue.
Yeah. And we talked about this, a month or two ago, basically talking about is Baylor a one and done school now? And it certainly trends towards that direction. I don't know that they'll ever have the Calipari or even some Krzyzewski starting 5 of one and dones, but that's something that is the next evolution. It really is, of Scott Drew, the coach. No one doubting that he can coach, but there's only one ball to go around, and there is only so much inexperience you can have in the lineup, no matter how good they are. We saw that this year. Even there were some games where Keontae George looked like a freshman. Not many, by the way, but it did happen. And you'll have that this year with Jacoby and with Eve Misi and handling the physicality of the Big 12. It's where the transfer portal needs to be as good for Baylor in this new look Baylor at this program as it was 10 years ago, 7 years ago, 5 years ago for Baylor as a different looking program. Scott Drew needs to be just as good in the transfer portal as it is now, as he was 5 years ago when it was tougher to navigate. Does that make sense? He needs to bring in that experience. He needs to bring in guys that he knows can play at this level. And it was tougher to get guys like Davion Mitchell in the door, Adam Flagler, Maceo Teague.
Well, you know how he did
they had to sit out a year.
And he did it because they were young, right? They weren't big stars of the game, which not a terrible recruiting tactic if it won you a national championship.
It worked a charm. Yeah, it did.
So that's why I like the Dale Bonners of the world. I know it didn't work out, but if you remember, Adam Flagler was a Dale Bonner. Davion Mitchell and Jared Butler and Maceo Teague, these guys were Dale Bonners. They were, Freddie Gillespie, we'll take you. Yep. Sure. And then we'll will build you up into a great national championship player. So I like the one and done guys are good. It shows that Baylor's a big brain in college basketball. Baylor could win 10 national championships and never get the respect of Duke or UNC. Because
look, UConn is still not getting that respect.
UConn effect, 100%. It's the UConn effect. Like, these brands just aren't big enough. Baylor's one of those. It's just not. It's not a Duke. I don't know how to change it. Duke's not a big school.
I was gonna say, I think the only one that rose above it was Duke.
Yeah,
and that was 35 years ago.
Because Duke's a little private school still with great academics.
Sure is.
And I'm a big private school graduate.
Yeah. One thing here, Drake, I do want to ask you about.
Please do.
We dipped into the NIL a little bit and the transfer portal as well. So I'm thinking, I thought this the other day. I'm wondering if the transfer portal or if NIL is going to hurt Baylor basketball more in the transfer portal than it is going to be for recruits coming out of high school. Because clearly that hasn't slowed down. It's only picking up for Baylor with, again, George and Misi and Walter and Tre Johnson, hopefully. But is someone like Dale Bonner one that you expected to leave a couple years ago?
Not a couple years ago, probably. I don't think he left for NIL. I think he left because
but I think it helps for someone like that. Or LJ Cryer's the same thing. I know that's not the only thing, but they say in both those cases, I'm going closer to home. I'm playing at a big program. Not as good a program, obviously, as Baylor, but I can stay close to home. I can make some money here and really up my game as well. Whereas Baylor was just offering me, a chance to win a national championship and also improve my game. So you know what I mean? So are we going to see more of Dale Bonners where they're like, oh my God, I raised my profile big at Baylor. Now I can play a year or two at somewhere that is closer to home and I'm going to make some money. So it's not the end all be all, but I wonder if it becomes more of an issue for Baylor in the transfer portal than it does recruiting kids out of high school.
Oh yeah, I think it's portal. I mean, because
these kids are going to be here for 1 year. The Tre Johnsons, the Keontae George, the Eve Mises, they're going to be here for a year and then they're going to make real money.
Right. I'm junior Dale Bonner, reporting for service, and I'm seeing freshman so-and-so at Miami making $100,000. I want that. I want that. I'm a high school kid. I got to play basketball for 1 year. I want a good progression in that year, can make a little bit of money and then go to the NBA in the top 10. I want that. So yeah, I think it's definitely more for the portal. I'm definitely more for those Cougs. Go Cougs, man. I've just been thinking about that all day. This has been
LJ Cryer's Cougs.
Yeah. Thank you for making, which is just not a good brand in college sports. Thanks for making Locked On Baylor your first listen every single day. Unless you're a UCF or Houston fan, get out of here. Get out of here.
Get out of here, Dennis.
Come back on Monday. We'll talk about sports. This has been and always will be Locked On. What's the oldest college in Texas? Baylor.